Ashley's hands trembled as she opened the local business magazine, coffee forgotten beside her. The world stopped. Derek's face smiled from the cover, standing proudly before his successful diner chain. 7 years since that harmless prank, leaving him stranded at that Colorado gas station. The glossy paper felt accusatory against her worn fingertips, distant neighbor laughter highlighting her empty apartment's silence. Her finger traced his confident smile, so different from the hurt in his eyes that day. Ever made one terrible mistake that destroyed everything? Share your story below, like if this hits home, and follow to discover how a cruel prank led to Derek's triumph and Ashley's devastating loss. The coffee mug slipped, bitter liquid pooling like the tears now streaming down her face. 7 years of divorce, job loss, friendship dissolution, all from what was supposed to be just a joke. The magazine fell from trembling hands as Ashley made a decision through her sobs. She needed to find him. Derek watched the taillights of Ashley's car fade into the Colorado horizon, dust settling on the empty highway. A joke, she'd said with a laugh. They'd be right back. He checked his watch again. 1 hour and 17 minutes now. His hand reached for his phone, finding only empty pocket. The memory flashed. Ashley's slender fingers extended. "Let me see that photo of the mountains," she'd said. Her friends Madison and Brittany giggling in the back seat. Jade nudging Ashley's shoulder with a whispered comment that made them all laugh harder. The gas station's fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across his weathered face. Derek approached the counter, shoulders straight despite the growing knot in his stomach. "My wife and her friends," his voice caught, a slight crack betraying the composure he fought to maintain. "They'll be back soon, right?" The young attendant's glance held that particular mix of pity and discomfort that made Derek's throat tighten. A single tear formed in the corner of his eye. He brushed it away quickly with a calloused thumb, turning toward the window before the stranger could witness more. Outside, the sunset painted the mountains in fading orange and purple, colors bleeding into darkness. The temperature dropped with the sun, Colorado evening chill seeping through his light jacket. Derek sat on the metal bench outside, its cold immediately penetrating his jeans. A cricket chirped somewhere in the scrubby brush, the sound emphasizing the vast emptiness surrounding him. The tear that tracked down his cheek surprised him. 63 years old, and here he sat, abandoned like an unwanted pet at a rest stop. Not fear, he'd faced worse in his time, but the shock of betrayal from the woman who'd shared his bed for 11 years. A young couple pulled up, laughing as they entered the station. Derek nodded politely as they passed, dignity intact despite the hollowness spreading through his chest. His jaw muscle tightened briefly before relaxing into practiced calm. The station door opened again. The attendant leaned out, phone cord stretched to its limit. "Mr. Last bus already left for the night. Nearest town's 40 miles. Nobody else coming through until morning most likely." Derek nodded, the simple motion masking the calculations already beginning in his mind. "Understood. Thank you." Something in his steady response made the attendant study him closer. "You gonna be okay?" "I'm fine," Derek said, the second word quivering almost imperceptibly. Not fine, not remotely, but he'd be damned if he'd collapse here on this bench where Ashley might find him when she returned. If she returned. The thought solidified like ice in his veins, bringing with it not despair, but a surprising clarity. Derek stood, brushing invisible dust from his pants, and walked back into the station. His eyes scanned the wall behind the counter, noting the local advertisements pinned haphazardly. Any decent restaurants around here? He asked, voice steadier now. The attendant's surprise showed in his raised eyebrows, clearly not the question he'd expected from a man stranded by his wife. In the fluorescent glare, Derek's weathered face revealed nothing of the plans already forming. One betrayal wouldn't define the rest of his life, not if he had anything to say about it. Night had fallen completely, the gas station's harsh lights creating an island in the Colorado darkness. Derek paced the small store area, 7 steps from the refrigerated drinks to the snack aisle, 11 steps to the register, and back. His shoulders remained tight, tension visible only in the careful precision of each movement. "Yeah, guy's wife left him here," the attendant spoke into the phone, voice lowered, but not enough in the quiet store. "Some kind of mean prank or something. No, just sitting there like a statue half the time." Derek paused by the travel brochures, yellowed with age, thumbing through them without seeing the faded attractions. The attendant's words yanked a memory from hours earlier. Ashley's friends in the back seat. Madison, leaning forward with that mischievous glint. "Do it," she'd whispered. "Just for a little while." Brittany twisting her wedding ring nervously, glancing at Derek. "Maybe not here?" And Jade's dismissive laugh. "He'll be fine. It'll be funny." Ashley hesitating just a moment before nodding, joining their laughter. A fresh wave of hurt surged through him, bringing with it an unexpected flash of anger. A single tear formed, this one hot with indignation rather than shock. Derek turned away, jaw clenching, as he swallowed hard against the emotion. Grown men didn't break down in convenience stores, especially not men who'd spent a lifetime solving problems more complicated than a stranded evening. He approached the counter, shoulders squared. "Could I use your phone?" His fingers trembled slightly on the unfamiliar keypad as he dialed Ashley's cell. Straight to voicemail. Their home phone rang 8 times before the answering machine picked up. With hesitation, he dialed Madison's number, remembered from countless dinner parties. One ring, then silence. The call disconnected the moment he said, "Madison, it's Derek." He closed his eyes briefly, confirmation settling like a weight. This wasn't a prank gone too far. This was deliberate. The cold coffee in his styrofoam cup had a lipstick stain from earlier, the bitter liquid matching the taste in his mouth. The floor squeaked under his feet as he moved back to the counter, methodically emptying his wallet. Credit cards, driver's license, $63 cash, business cards from his former company. Derek arranged them precisely, taking inventory of his resources. "Coffee refill?" the attendant offered, sympathy evident. "I'm fine," Derek responded. The word fine wavering almost imperceptibly before steadying. The wind whistled through the thin windows, promising mountain cold. The smell of industrial cleaner barely masked years of spilled sodas and road dust. Derek caught his reflection in the darkened window. A stranger stared back, a man whose life had veered suddenly off course. His eyes shifted focus, noticing a faded "Help Wanted" sign in the window of a diner pictured on a local flyer. Derek studied it, head tilting slightly as calculations began forming. "Any decent restaurants around here?" he asked, voice stronger now. The attendant blinked, clearly surprised by the question. "Couple places in Morrison, the next town over. Old Timers Diner's been there forever. Good breakfast. Why?" Derek didn't answer directly. "How far to Morrison?" 40 miles northeast. Nothing running there till morning now." Derek nodded, the simple movement containing decision rather than resignation. His finger tapped the "Help Wanted" sign on the flyer. "Owner looking for experienced help?" The attendant studied him with new interest. "Old man Jenkins always needs help. You cook?" The corner of Derek's mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile. "I can learn." Outside, the night deepened, but inside, something had shifted. Ashley had left him stranded, but Derek Palmer wasn't a man who stayed down for long. Not at 23, and certainly not at 63. "You can use the back office to rest," the attendant said, unlocking a door behind the register. "Manager won't be in till morning." Derek nodded his thanks, following the young man into a small room lit by a single desk lamp. The yellow light cast long shadows across the cluttered desk and faded local maps pinned haphazardly to the walls. A worn leather office chair, cracked with age, waited beside a coffee-stained desk calendar. Alone for the first time since the abandonment, Derek allowed himself one moment of weakness. His shoulders slumped, a shudder passing through his frame, before control reasserted itself. The musty smell of old paperwork and stale cigarettes filled his lungs as he took a deep, steadying breath. The phone book lay open on the desk, its thin pages dog-eared from use. Derek's finger moved methodically down the listings, stopping at a name that sparked recognition. Thomas Reynolds. They'd worked together on a project 15 years ago, before Derek's early retirement. If memory served, Tom had moved to a small town in Colorado. Could it be this close? Derek dialed, each number pressed with deliberate care. Tom Reynolds. The voice was older but unmistakable. "Tom, it's Derek Palmer." He kept his voice steady, betraying nothing of his circumstances. "Derek? Well, I'll be damned. Where are you calling from?" "Believe it or not, a gas station about 40 miles southwest of you." Derek glanced at the map on the wall, confirming his location. "I've had a situation with transportation. Wondering if you might be able to help me out in the morning." "Of course, old friend. What happened? Car trouble?" Derek's jaw tightened briefly. "Just need a temporary arrangement. I'll explain tomorrow." The conversation continued, possibilities opening with each exchange. Tom mentioned the diner in passing. "Jenkins is a friend, always complaining about needing reliable help." And Derek filed the information away, seeds of a plan taking root. Back in the mini-mart, Derek purchased a small notepad. Returning to the office, the faded map on the wall showed routes and distances. His fingers traced possible paths, mind already miles ahead of his current predicament. He wrote careful calculations in the notepad, figuring expenses. Bus fare to the nearest city, 73.57. He underlined the amount twice, committing it to memory, then tore the page out and folded it carefully into his wallet. "Just need a temporary arrangement," he had told Tom, but the words rang hollow even to his own ears. The wedding ring caught the light as Derek twisted it thoughtfully. 11 years of marriage unraveled by one cruel joke. No, not a joke, a revelation of character, hers and his. Derek glanced at his watch. Nearly midnight. Almost 6 hours since Ashley had driven away, laughing with her friends. 6 hours in which she had made no attempt to return, to call, to ensure his safety. The decision crystallized. In the morning he would leave with Tom. He would find work at Jenkins's diner. He would rebuild. And he would leave his phone on the counter when he departed. A deliberate severance. A message Ashley would understand when she eventually returned to find him gone. The leather chair creaked as Derek leaned back, eyes closing briefly. At 63, most men worried about settling into retirement, not starting over. But there was a strange clarity in this forced rebirth, a purpose that had been missing in recent years. The night stretched ahead, but for the first time since watching Ashley's taillights disappear, Derek felt something like calm. Not because the pain had lessened, but because he had reclaimed control. The one thing Ashley and her friends had tried to take from him. Tomorrow would be the first day of whatever came next. Tom's truck pulled away from the gas station, Derek seated beside him, the morning sun warming the windshield. Derek's phone remained on the counter inside, a deliberate abandonment to mirror his own. "Thanks for this," Derek said, watching the station recede in the side mirror. "Any friend who remembers my coffee preference after 15 years deserves a rescue," Tom chuckled, raising his travel mug. "Now, you going to tell me what really happened?" 3 hours later, Ashley's car screeched into the same gas station parking lot, kicking up dust. Madison, Brittany, and Jade exchanged nervous glances in the back seat. "He's probably furious," Brittany said, twisting her wedding ring. "I knew we shouldn't have—" "It was just supposed to be an hour," Ashley interrupted, hands tight on the steering wheel. "Just a little scare." Madison rolled her eyes. "He's a grown man, not a child. He's fine." Ashley exited the car, approaching the station with forced confidence that faltered with each step. The same young attendant looked up, recognition immediate. "You're back." "My husband, the man who was here yesterday, left about 3 hours ago." Ashley's face went slack. "Left? How?" "Friend picked him up." The attendant reached under the counter. "He left this." Derek's phone sat on the counter, screen cracked from where the attendant had dropped it in surprise when Ashley's call had come through. 6 hours after she'd abandoned Derek. Ashley's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it again. Did he say where he was going? The attendant's expression hardened. "No, ma'am, he didn't." Derek stood in the kitchen of Old Timer's Diner, the sizzle of the grill creating a rhythm that felt surprisingly familiar. Tom's introduction to Jenkins had been brief but effective. Derek here managed operations for 15 years, knows numbers better than the IRS, and isn't afraid of hard work. Jenkins, a weathered man in his 70s, had simply handed Derek an apron. "Breakfast rush starts in 10 years. Can you flip pancakes?" "I can learn," Derek had replied. Now, 2 hours into the shift, muscle memory from countless weekend breakfasts had taken over. Derek flipped a perfect pancake, the simple action bringing an unexpected satisfaction. "Not bad for a rookie," Jenkins commented, watching a plate go out. "You said you did operations management?" Derek nodded. 30 years. Early retirement 2 years ago. "Numbers guy, huh?" Jenkins slid an order ticket across. "I've always been terrible with the books." Ashley sat at their dining room table, divorce papers spread before her. 3 weeks of searching had yielded nothing. Derek had vanished as completely as if the earth had swallowed him. The police had been dismissive. "No crime to report, ma'am. Adults are allowed to leave." Madison hadn't taken her calls in days. Brittany only spoke in uncomfortable monosyllables. Jade had been blunt. "We went too far, Ash." "Way too far." Ashley's boss had called that morning with a warning about her performance. 3 deadline misses in 2 weeks. Clients complaining about her distraction. Her signature trembled on the divorce petition Derek had somehow filed from wherever he was, a tear falling to stain the ink. Derek cashed his first paycheck, the small sum representing something far more valuable than money. Independence, a fresh start. He looked at the modest studio apartment he'd rented, Spartan but clean. "Got a head for business, don't you?" Jenkins had commented that afternoon, reviewing Derek's suggestions for streamlining the ordering process. "Saved me nearly $400 the first month you've been here." Derek allowed himself a small smile, the first since that day at the gas station. In his wallet, The folded paper with 73s 50 cents written and underlined remained, a reminder not of what he had lost, but of what it had cost him to find something new. The divorce papers had been simple to file. The lawyer had asked few questions, understanding the efficiency with which Derek approached the dissolution of his marriage. His signature had been steady, decisive, with no hesitation to mark the ending of 11 years. That night, as Derek sat at his small table eating a simple dinner cooked with his improving skills, his thoughts weren't of Ashley or her betrayal, but of Jenkins' offhand comment, "Place could use a partner with your head for numbers." A seed, planted in the barren ground of abandonment, had begun to take root. Derek spread the business loan application across the bank manager's desk, his finger tracing the 5-year projection he'd meticulously prepared. 6 months at Old Timer's Diner had taught him every aspect of the restaurant business, from inventory management to customer preferences. "These numbers are impressive, Mr. Palmer," the manager said, reviewing the documents. "Most people your age are withdrawing retirement funds, not seeking expansion loans. Most people my age haven't had my recent opportunities," Derek replied, the understatement bringing a subtle warmth to his eyes. "Jenkins is really selling you half the business?" Derek nodded, "and helping finance the second location." Ashley stared at her computer screen, the spreadsheet blurring as she tried to focus. The error was obvious now. She'd transposed 2 columns, costing the client thousands. The third major mistake this month. Her office phone rang. "Ashley Palmer, please come to Mr. Branson's office." The walk to her supervisor's office felt endless, colleagues' eyes following her progress. The performance warning from last month sat prominently on his desk. "Ashley, we've worked together 7 years," Branson began, discomfort evident in his posture. "But these errors—" She left carrying a cardboard box of personal items, termination letter tucked inside her purse. The irony wasn't lost on her. Precision had been her professional hallmark before the gas station incident, before everything unraveled. Derek scouted the empty storefront, sunlight streaming through large windows, highlighting dust motes dancing in the air. His footsteps echoed in the vacant space as he paced the dimensions, envisioning tables, a counter, the flow of customers. "What do you think?" Jenkins asked, watching his protégé with undisguised pride. "It has potential," Derek answered, already sketching layout ideas in his notebook. "High visibility location, good parking, reasonable lease terms." Jenkins chuckled. "Most folks see an empty building. You see a business plan." "Life experience," Derek replied simply. Ashley's phone displayed Madison's number for the 5th time that week. Each call had gone straight to voicemail. She tried Brittany next, receiving a terse text in response. "Can't talk now. Busy." Jade had stopped responding altogether 3 weeks ago. The isolation pressed in like physical weight. No husband, no job, no friends. The women who had laughed with her as they drove away from Derek had disappeared from her life as completely as he had. Ashley scrolled through social media, freezing when she saw a photo posted by Brittany, Madison, Brittany, and Jade at a restaurant, smiling. No Ashley, no invitation. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to surround yourself with people who bring out your best. # no regrets." Her thumb hovered over the comment button before she closed the app, the rejection stinging worse than the termination letter. Derek met with potential suppliers, expanding his network in the small business community. Jenkins had introduced him to his sister Ellen, who ran the local farmers market. Her practical approach to business matched Derek's, their conversations flowing effortlessly from inventory management to customer service philosophy. "You're not what I expected," Ellen had said during their third meeting. "What did you expect?" Derek asked. Jenkins said you'd had a rough start. Most people carry that weight forever. She studied him thoughtfully. You seem to have set yours down. Derek considered this. Not down, just repurposed. The doorbell rang, Ashley hurrying to answer, hope flaring briefly. Instead of a friend, she found Jade standing stiffly on the porch. Can I come in? Jade asked, no warmth in her voice. In the living room, surrounded by moving boxes, Ashley could no longer afford the house on savings alone. Jade delivered the final blow. We can't do this anymore, Ashley, she said bluntly. What we did, what you pushed us to do, it was cruel, and we can't keep pretending it wasn't. It was supposed to be a joke, Ashley whispered, the excuse sounding hollow even to her own ears. A man disappeared from our lives because of that joke. We've all had to live with that. Jade stood to leave. I'm sorry about your job and the house, but I can't be your support system anymore. After Jade left, Ashley slid to the floor against the wall, the first full breakdown since the abandonment overtaking her. Sobs racked her body as she stared at her phone contacts, scrolling through names of people who no longer answered her calls. Ever watched your whole life unravel after one terrible mistake? Share your experience below, like if Ashley's isolation hits home, and follow to see how Derek builds something beautiful from absolute zero. Derek stood in his empty diner space, lease signed and keys in hand. The chalk measurements on the walls marked where equipment would soon be installed. He envisioned the future, customers filling the tables, staff moving efficiently, the satisfaction of building something meaningful from nothing. Ellen had helped him choose the name. Fresh Start Diner, she'd suggested, the symbolism obvious but fitting. As Derek locked up for the evening, his thoughts weren't on what he had lost 6 months ago, but on what he had gained: purpose, clarity, and the surprising realization that the worst day of his life had led to possibilities he would never have discovered otherwise. 3 years later, a small crowd gathered outside Fresh Start Diner for the ribbon cutting. Derek stood at the entrance, scissors in hand, Ellen beside him. Jenkins watched proudly from the front row, his weathered face beaming. Fresh Start began as just that. A fresh start when I needed one most, Derek addressed the onlookers. Today, we're expanding to our second location thanks to this community's support. The ribbon fell away to applause. Derek's steady hands had guided this dream from concept to reality, from one small diner to a growing local business. Regular customers greeted him by name as they entered, the morning bustle beginning. Never would have guessed this would be your third act, Jenkins commented later, watching Derek expertly manage the breakfast rush. Derek nodded thoughtfully. Neither would I. In a sparse apartment across town, Ashley sat alone at a small table. The space was minimalist, not by choice, but necessity. The modest furnishings all she could afford on her new salary. The retail job barely covered rent, a crushing step down from her former executive position. Her finger traced the rim of a chipped coffee mug, silence her only companion. The wedding photo that once stood prominently on her nightstand now lay face down in a drawer, too painful to display, but too significant to discard. The neighbor's television laughter filtered through thin walls, emphasizing her isolation. 3 years, and the consequences of that day continued to unfold like a relentless domino effect. Derek moved through the diner kitchen, guiding his stepson Michael through the pancake recipe that had become one of their signatures. The key is patience, Derek explained, watching the boy's careful technique. Wait for the tiny bubbles before you flip. Michael executed a perfect flip, his face lighting up with accomplishment. At 14, he had Ellen's quick mind and growing appreciation for the business Derek had built. Their relationship had developed slowly over the past 2 years, respect evolving into genuine affection. Ellen appeared in the doorway, watching them with undisguised happiness. "You two ready for the dinner rush?" The supplier called, delivery running late. "We'll manage," Derek responded, the simple phrase carrying the confidence of a man who had navigated far worse challenges. Ashley scrolled past social media updates, former colleagues' promotions, Madison's vacation photos, Brittany's family gathering, lives continuing without her. She paused at a local business feature, a familiar face causing her breath to catch. Derek stared back from her screen, standing proudly before a diner with "Fresh Start" emblazoned above the door. The article praised the local success story, highlighting the expansion to a second location and plans for a third. Her hand trembled around her coffee cup as she read details of his new life. Owner Derek Palmer credits his business partner and wife Ellen with much of the diner's success. Wife. The word struck like a physical blow. "I knew him a long time ago," she told her co-worker later that day, finger tracing Derek's image in the printed newspaper. "Really? Says here he's quite the success story." Ashley nodded, unable to explain that she was the reason for his fresh start, that she had abandoned him at a gas station as a joke that had destroyed her life while somehow launching his. Derek reviewed the financial records in his office, family photos proudly displayed on the desk. Ellen smiled from a frame beside Michael's school picture, their small wedding celebration captured in another. His gaze lingered briefly on a notation in his special accounts ledger, $73.50 bus fare kept separate from business funds, a private reminder. "Third location looks promising," Ellen said, entering with expansion documents. "The bank approved the additional funding this morning." Derek signed with confident strokes, his signature carrying the weight of hard-earned success. "3 years ago, I never expected all this," he admitted, gesturing to the thriving business, the photos, the future spreading before them. "That's what I love about you," Ellen replied. "You turned a crisis into an opportunity instead of a tragedy." Ashley circled the diner address in the newspaper, determination forming through her tears. 3 years of consequences had taught her humility the hard way. Perhaps an apology, however belated, might offer some closure to them both. She stared at her reflection, rehearsing words that seemed inadequate against the backdrop of their divergent paths. What could she possibly say to a man whose life had improved so dramatically after she'd cruelly cast him aside? The newspaper article lay open on her table, Derek's success a stark contrast to her diminished existence. The joke, it seemed, had been on her all along. But she needed to see him, to understand how abandonment at a remote gas station had somehow been the best thing that ever happened to him, and the worst thing that ever happened to her. Ashley stood before her bathroom mirror, applying makeup with trembling hands. The dark circles under her eyes resisted concealment, testament to sleepless nights spent rehearsing what she would say to Derek. Her hair, once styled weekly at an expensive salon, now hung in a simple cut she maintained herself. "He needs to know I'm sorry," she whispered to her reflection, the words meant to bolster courage that threatened to desert her. What she didn't say aloud was the desperate hope that his forgiveness might somehow release her from the prison her life had become. That perhaps, in some small way, seeing him would help her understand how to rebuild as he had done. What would you say to someone whose life you destroyed years ago? Comment your approach below, like if you're invested in this moment of truth, and follow to witness the powerful confrontation that will leave Ashley speechless. Derek's morning followed its comfortable routine. Breakfast with Ellen and Michael, A quick review of inventory orders, the drive to Fresh Start's flagship location. The diner had become the center of a life he couldn't have imagined 4 years earlier, its success a testament to resilience rather than revenge. The supplier called, "Price increase on dairy," his manager reported as Derek hung his jacket in the office. Derek nodded, already calculating adjustments. "Let's review the menu pricing this afternoon. We can absorb some of it, pass along what we must." Such problems seemed almost trivial now, ordinary business challenges rather than catastrophic personal betrayals. The perspective shift was perhaps the most valuable gift from that abandoned evening in Colorado. Ashley clutched the newspaper with Derek's feature as she boarded the bus to the diner's location. Each rehearsed apology felt increasingly hollow against the reality of what she'd done, what they'd all done. Just supposed to be a joke, she had told herself countless times. But jokes were funny. Jokes didn't destroy marriages, end careers, dissolve friendships. Jokes didn't leave you sitting alone on a bus 4 years later, desperately seeking absolution from the person you'd wronged. The bus windows framed passing scenes of ordinary life, people walking dogs, shopping, laughing together. Simple pleasures that had slipped from her grasp as consequences compounded. Derek reviewed expansion plans with his manager, the blueprint for their third location spread across the table. 4 years of calculated growth had established Fresh Start as a local institution, its reputation built on quality and consistency. Staffing projections look solid, Derek noted, adding figures in the margin. The skills that had once managed corporate operations now directed his own growing enterprise, experience repurposed rather than wasted. Through the office window, he could see the diner operating like clockwork, servers moving efficiently between tables, cooks timing orders perfectly, customers enjoying meals in comfortable surroundings. The machine he had built from nothing but determination and experience. Ashley stood across the street, watching through the large windows of Fresh Start Diner. The lunch crowd filled nearly every table, waitstaff moving with practiced efficiency. The atmosphere projected warmth and welcome, exactly what had been missing from her life since that fateful day. Then she saw him. Derek emerged from a back office, moving confidently through the diner. He stopped to greet an elderly couple by name, his genuine smile revealing laugh lines that hadn't been there during their marriage. He looked happy. Completely, authentically happy in a way she couldn't remember seeing before. Ashley's knees nearly buckled. She had expected anger, bitterness, perhaps even satisfaction at her downfall. Not this complete transformation into someone who had clearly moved beyond the need for any of those emotions. Her rehearsed speech evaporated. What could she possibly say to this man who had not only survived her cruelty, but had thrived because of it? Derek glanced up while checking a customer's order and froze momentarily. Through the window, across the street, stood a ghost from the past. Ashley, looking small and uncertain, watching the diner with an expression he couldn't quite read. 4 years compressed into a single heartbeat of recognition. Not pain, not anger, just simple acknowledgement of a person who had once been central to his life and now belonged firmly to his past. He nodded to his host. "Table for one, please. By the window." "Someone you know?" Ellen asked quietly, appearing at his side, having noticed his momentary stillness. "Someone I knew," Derek corrected gently. He reached into the register drawer, removing a small envelope he'd kept separate from business funds for 4 years. "I've been carrying this a long time." Ellen's eyes showed understanding as she glanced from the envelope to Ashley's figure across the street. "Want me to handle this?" Derek shook his head. "Some things need closure." His hand remained steady as he slipped the envelope into his pocket and returned to work, waiting for Ashley to find the courage to cross the street. Ashley's heart hammered against her ribs as she pushed open the door to Fresh Start Diner. The lunch rush created a comfortable background hum, plates clinking and conversations flowing. A heavenly aroma of fresh-baked bread and coffee enveloped her, so different from the sterile, fluorescent environment where she now worked. A young hostess greeted her with a professional smile. "Welcome to Fresh Start. Table for one?" Ashley nodded, unable to trust her voice. The rehearsed speech had abandoned her completely, leaving only raw nerves and regret. "Right this way, please." The hostess led her to a corner table with clear sight lines to the register where Derek had been standing moments before. Now he had disappeared into the back, and Ashley felt a surge of panic. Would he refuse to see her? Had he spotted her and decided she wasn't worth his time? She sat with trembling hands, smoothing the newspaper article on the table before her like a talisman. The hostess left a menu, promising someone would be with her shortly. From her vantage point, Ashley could see through a half-open office door where family photos lined a shelf. Derek with a woman, Ellen, according to the article, their arms around each other at what appeared to be their wedding. A teenage boy who must be his stepson, holiday gatherings, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, an entire life built without her, each image a testament to what she had carelessly discarded. "Welcome to Fresh Start." The voice jolted her from her thoughts. Derek stood beside her table, order pad in hand, professional smile in place. No recognition colored his tone, no special inflection to indicate their shared history. He might have been greeting any customer on any ordinary day. "Derek," she managed, her voice smaller than intended. It's me." "I know," he replied simply, expression unchanged. "What can I get for you today?" His calm professionalism was more devastating than any anger could have been. Ashley had prepared for rage, for cold dismissal, even for satisfaction at her obvious decline. But this polite detachment, stripped away her last defenses. I saw the article," she stumbled, gesturing to the newspaper, "about your success. I wanted to tell you." Her carefully rehearsed apology disintegrated into incoherence. How could she possibly compress 4 years of consequences, of reflection, of gradual acceptance of her own cruelty into words that wouldn't sound pathetically inadequate? Derek waited, neither leaning in with interest nor away with disgust. His posture remained perfectly neutral, a man simply waiting for a customer to place an order. "I'm sorry," she finally said, the words hanging between them like delicate glass. "What happened at the gas station? It was supposed to be just a joke, but I know now how cruel it was. I've regretted it every day since." Derek listened without interruption, no flicker of emotion betraying his thoughts. Behind him, several staff members watched the interaction with subtle protective attention, clearly aware of who Ashley was. "It was a long time ago," Derek finally said, neither accepting nor rejecting her apology. His voice held no bitterness, but no warmth either, just simple acknowledgement of a fact. Ashley's hands fidgeted with her napkin, shredding the edges as she searched for a response. The contrast between them had never been more stark, her nervous energy against his composed confidence, her diminished circumstances against his evident success. "Your diners, they're amazing," she tried again. "You've built something really special." "Thank you," he replied, with the same professional courtesy he might show any customer offering a compliment. A glance toward the family photos caught Derek's attention momentarily, a subtle redirection of his focus that spoke volumes. The center of his world lay elsewhere now, in relationships and achievements that had nothing to do with her. Madison, Brittany, and Jade. Ashley's voice trailed off, seeking some connection, some shared understanding of the aftermath. "I haven't thought about them in years," Derek said simply. The statement neither accusatory nor boastful, merely true. His eyes met hers directly for the first time, and Ashley was struck by their clarity. No lingering pain clouded them, no festering resentment. He had truly moved forward, while she remained shackled to that moment at the gas station. "Excuse me for a moment," Derek said, the same courtesy extended to any momentarily abandoned customer. "There's something I've been keeping for you." He walked away with unhurried steps, disappearing into the office with the family photos. Through the doorway, Ashley glimpsed a woman, Ellen, looking up from paperwork with a questioning expression. Derek's response was too quiet to hear, but the woman nodded with understanding. The diner continued its lunchtime rhythm around Ashley, her presence creating no disruption in its well-orchestrated flow. A few curious glances from staff were the only acknowledgement of the moment's significance. Derek returned carrying a simple white envelope, sitting down across from her with deliberate movements. "I've been carrying this for a long time," he said, sliding the envelope across the table with steady hands. Ashley stared at it, confusion momentarily overriding her nervousness. The envelope was clearly aged, its edges slightly worn from years of storage. "What is it?" she asked, fingers trembling as she reached for it. "Open it," Derek replied, his expression unchanged. The paper crinkled loudly in the suddenly quiet space as Ashley opened the envelope. Inside was a check dated 4 years earlier, the day after the gas station incident. The amount made her breath catch. $73.50. "I don't understand," she whispered, confusion evident. "It's the exact cost of the bus ticket that day," Derek explained, his voice matter-of-fact. "The precise amount it cost me to start over." Understanding dawned on Ashley's face, tears forming as the perfect symmetry of his response registered. No angry tirade, no bitter accusations, just the meticulous accounting of a single expense that had changed both their lives irrevocably. Derek rose without waiting for her response. "We're even now, Ashley. Take care." He returned to work, moving through his diner with the confidence of a man completely at home in the life he had built. No backwards glance, no lingering attachment to either anger or regret. Ashley remained at the table, the check in her hand, worth so much more than its face value, a receipt for everything she had lost and everything he had found. Chapter 9. Perfect Justice. Ashley sat motionless at the corner table of Fresh Start Diner, the check for $73.50 lying before her like a verdict rendered after a long-delayed trial. The lunch rush had subsided, afternoon sunlight streaming through the large windows, casting longer shadows across the polished surfaces. The ambient noise of the diner had dimmed to a gentle murmur, as if the universe itself were providing space for the magnitude of this moment to fully register. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the date on the check, written the very day after she had abandoned Derek at that remote Colorado gas station. 4 years ago, he had calculated this amount immediately, carried it all this time, waited for this moment of perfect closure. The precision of it left her breathless. Not $75 or $70, the exact cost of the bus ticket that had carried him away from abandonment and toward his new life. Derek moved efficiently behind the counter, directing staff with quiet authority. Occasional glances from employees toward Ashley's table suggested they knew exactly who she was, their protective attention to Derek both touching and devastating. These people cared about him, respected him. He had built not just a business, but a community. Through her tears, Ashley watched as a woman approached Derek, Ellen, his wife. The easy intimacy between them was evident in their brief exchange, a gentle touch on his shoulder, the quiet confidence of deep connection. Ashley forced herself to observe their interaction, a painful confirmation of all she had lost. At a nearby table, the teenage boy from the office photos, Derek's stepson, worked on homework, occasionally looking up to ask Derek a question. The boy's relaxed demeanor spoke of trust and security, a stable family unit that had welcomed Derek completely. All of this, the thriving business, the loving family, the obvious respect from staff and customers, had grown from the cruel seed of abandonment she had planted. The irony threatened to choke her. What had been intended as humiliation had instead liberated him from a relationship that, in retrospect, had clearly limited him. Ashley's mind traveled back to their marriage, seeing it now through the lens of devastating clarity. Derek had been reliable, steady, perhaps too predictable. She had surrounded herself with friends who found excitement in cruelty masked as humor, who valued momentary thrills over lasting bonds. She had chosen them over her husband's dignity that day, a choice that had set them both on irreversible paths. The check seemed to grow heavier in her hand, its significance expanding beyond the modest amount. It represented the exact cost of Derek's freedom, from her, from a marriage that had clearly been unworthy of him, from limitations he might never have recognized had she not so carelessly discarded him. At their table across the diner, Derek said something that made Ellen laugh, the sound carrying a warmth that Ashley suddenly realized had been missing from their own marriage. When had genuine joy been replaced by the hollow excitement of cruel jokes and thoughtless pranks? Had Derek felt the erosion of respect long before that day at the gas station? Ashley carefully refolded the check and returned it to its envelope. She had come seeking forgiveness, closure, perhaps even some small way back into Derek's life. Instead, she had received something far more valuable and infinitely more painful: the truth, delivered not with vengeance, but with the simple clarity of a balanced ledger. And the check represented an accounting so precise it bordered on poetry, the cost of betrayal calculated to the penny, carried through years of waiting, delivered without fanfare when the moment finally arrived. It said everything without Derek having to speak a single word of accusation. She had been the joke all along. Ashley gathered her purse, leaving enough cash to cover a meal she hadn't ordered and a generous tip that felt like additional penance. As she stood, her legs unsteady beneath her, she caught one final glimpse of Derek's new life. The easy flow of his movements through the space he had created, the obvious pride in what he had built, the genuine connections with those around him. She stepped outside into the afternoon sunlight, the diner's warmth receding behind her. For 4 years, she had been trapped in the amber of that moment at the gas station, preserved in the consequences of her cruelty, while Derek had somehow used that same moment as a launching point for transformation. The bus stop bench offered a place to collect herself, her tears flowing freely now. The check in her purse represented perfect justice, not vengeful, not excessive, not cruel, simply precise. Derek had calculated exactly what it had cost him to start over and presented her with the bill. No interest charged despite the years of waiting. Across the street, through the diner window, she could see Derek returning to his family's table, sliding into a seat beside his wife, helping his stepson with homework. The three of them formed a perfect tableau of connection and belonging, everything Ashley had thoughtlessly discarded. Madison, Brittany, and Jade were long gone from her life, their friendship having proven as substantial as morning dew under the harsh light of consequence. Her career had never recovered from the distraction and errors that followed Derek's disappearance. Her financial security had evaporated with her job loss. Even her self-image had been irrevocably altered. The person she had believed herself to be, successful, desirable, clever, replaced by a harsher truth, cruel, careless, ultimately disposable. The cruelest realization was that Derek harbored no animosity toward her. His "we're even now" carried no hidden venom, no lingering resentment, just the simple mathematical truth that accounts had been settled. She had been freed from his emotional ledger, released not through forgiveness, but through complete irrelevance to his current happiness. 4 years of Ashley's life had been defined by the absence Derek had left. A Derek-shaped hole in her existence that had never filled but only seemed to grow deeper with time. Meanwhile, Derek himself had used those same 4 years to create a life so complete that her brief appearance today had caused barely a ripple in its surface. A bus approached, its destination sign offering the promise of return to her sparse apartment. Ashley boarded mechanically, finding a seat by the window where she could watch Fresh Start Diner recede in the distance. The name itself seemed a final confirmation of Derek's triumph. He had indeed found a fresh start, building something nourishing and sustainable from the ashes of betrayal. What fresh start remained for her? The question lingered as the bus wound through city streets. Perhaps this moment of perfect justice, this balancing of accounts, offered its own beginning. Not the restoration she had foolishly hoped for, but the opportunity to finally move beyond the gravitational pull of that day at the gas station. The envelope felt heavy in her purse, the $73.50 salary check a tangible reminder that some debts could be calculated precisely while others, trust, dignity, respect, remained beyond quantification. Derek had named his price and considered the account settled. Ashley now faced the harder accounting, recognizing the full measure of what had been lost through carelessness and cruelty. As the bus continued its route, Ashley gazed at the passing city through tear-blurred eyes. Derek's life had become a testament to resilience, to the capacity for renewal even after profound betrayal. Her own had become a cautionary tale about the true cost of cruelty masked as humor, of valuing momentary excitement over lasting bonds. "The joke was on me," she whispered to her reflection in the bus window. The words held no self-pity, only the clear-eyed recognition of truth. Derek had known it all along, from the moment he had calculated the bus fare and tucked the amount away for future reference. He had recognized that day what had taken her 4 painful years to learn: that actions revealed character, that choices carried consequences, that the path to redemption began with honest accounting. Ashley wiped away her tears as the bus approached her stop. The check would remain uncashed, preserved as a reminder of the precise moment when accounts were settled and new ledgers could begin. Derek had given her not what she wanted: forgiveness, connection, absolution, but what she needed: clarity, closure, and the opportunity to finally face forward rather than eternally backward. The bus slowed to a stop. Ashley rose, steadier now than when she had left the diner. The $73.50 had purchased Derek's fresh start 4 years ago. Perhaps, in its own way, it was purchasing hers today. Isn't it something how life's cruelest moments can become our greatest turning points? That day at the gas station, watching taillights fade into dust, Derek stood abandoned, not just physically stranded, but emotionally blindsided by betrayal from those he trusted most. Perhaps you've stood in similar shoes, watching something precious drive away while you're left holding nothing but confusion and hurt. We've all been abandoned somewhere, haven't we? Maybe not at a Colorado gas station, but in a doctor's office receiving difficult news alone, in a lawyer's office signing divorce papers, at a kitchen table reading a letter that changes everything. That moment when the floor seems to disappear and you're falling without a safety net. The salt of tears mixing with the bitter taste of betrayal, that tightness in your chest that makes even breathing feel like work. What Derek's journey shows us isn't that pain disappears. It doesn't. Those moments of sitting on cold benches with tears tracking down weathered cheeks don't vanish from memory. The humiliation of being discussed by strangers, of realizing people you loved could be so casually cruel. These things leave marks, but marks can become maps if we let them, guiding us toward unexpected destinations. We're taught that dignity means never letting them see you cry, but real dignity, it's in what you do after the tears dry. It's in those small, deliberate decisions, writing down a bus fare amount, learning to flip pancakes, building something new, one careful brick at a time. It's in recognizing that what breaks us doesn't define us unless we let it. Derek didn't seek revenge, he sought rebirth. And in that choice lies wisdom that only comes from living long enough to know the difference. There's something powerful about watching someone who's been knocked down rise stronger than before. Not because the pain wasn't real. It was. Not because the betrayal didn't matter, it did. But because resilience is perhaps the most profound human quality we possess. The ability to look at an ending and see the faint outline of a beginning taking shape. Maybe that's what we learn as we add years to our lives, that every story has multiple chapters, and the most beautiful ones often start after the darkest pages. That $73.50 can represent not just what was lost, but what it costs sometimes to find something infinitely more valuable. That perfect justice isn't about making others hurt as we've hurt, but about finding joy they can neither give nor take away. Your story isn't finished either, friend. Whatever gas station you've been left at, whatever betrayal has brought tears to your eyes, remember, the rest of the journey is still unwritten. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best view comes after the hardest climb.